You seem to be describing essentially a death spiral. Unfit leaders lead to more unfit leaders, lead to more unfit policies, lead to, the destruction of society.
Well, it is, we can go in any direction. Mm-hmm. Just as individual illness can be brought to greater states of health or be drawn and pulled further into a death spiral, as you described. That's exactly the phrase I've been using since last year, or actually a couple of years even prior to that, of the state of our society. And well, the further into the death spiral we are, the harder it is to pull ourselves out.
Line with us is Dr. Bandy Lee, the medical doctor, forensic psychiatrist, and violence expert, president of the World Mental Health Coalition. Her latest book, The Psychology of Trump Contagion, an existential threat to American democracy and all humankind. And her previous works warning us about Donald Trump, even got her more than a little bit of backlash, which we've talked about on this program before. Her website, bandyxlee, BandyXlee.substack.com. Her Substack newsletter is just fabulous. It's free. You really need to sign up for it. It's brilliant. Dr. Lee and Bandy Lee on Blue Sky. Dr. Lee, welcome back to the program. It's always nice having you with us. You wrote a piece titled, "It's Happening Here." And you note that a cardinal feature of mental pathology is that it would never acknowledge that it is illness, and give the example of Republicans trying to put Trump derangement syndrome into law. Tell us about this.
Yes, thank you again for having me back.
Sure.
Well, I have started my piece with stating that many have now heard of my definition of fascism, which is mental pathology in politics, because it's wrong to think about it as an ideology or a set of rational ideas. It follows more the logic of pathology, and I think that's important to recognize because it follows a different kind of thinking and acting than normal people are accustomed to. And I think many are now recognizing from the severe blowout with what Donald Trump called his Liberation Day. But of course, it's the very opposite of liberation. There's extreme anxiety and an economic disaster that has not been seen in decades, and it's wholly human-made. This is only economic. What we can expect is actually what is the natural course of pathology, eventually death and destruction. Regardless of the means, however we get there is less important than the fact that we are heading there.
I find that absolutely fascinating that you're characterizing fascism as a pathology, a psychological pathology. The embrace of just raw power and violence. Well, could you expand on that, and also how democracy, the arguably the opposite of fascism, is a natural state, is not a pathology. I mean, we see democracy in the animal kingdom. We see it among little tiny babies. This search for fairness. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. In fact, lately I've been focusing more on what has led us to this situation, because, of course, the development of pathology is the end product of a long process. So there are structures in place. This is actually where we have a lot in common, in that I have often stated that structural violence, or the vast inequalities in society, whether it be socioeconomic or some other means of depriving vast populations of basic needs, that this would not just have a material effect, but also have a psychological consequence. And that has been going on for many decades in this country. And it is only a natural product that we would have more and more unfit leaders who, instead of guiding us to greater states of health, would lead us into greater states of destruction, and therefore greater trauma, and even more encouragement of unfit leaders and unfit individuals who by nature seek power, not in order to do good with that ability, but to hide their unfitness and incompetence. So it's a very destructive situation. So I've started a curriculum, in fact, through my Substack series, and I have video conferences every Friday where I bring up this whole developmental system whereby societies bring about unfit leaders. And it all begins with structures, the structures of society.
That's fascinating. You seem to be describing essentially a death spiral. Unfit leaders lead to more unfit leaders, lead to more unfit policies, lead to, the destruction of society. And we certainly saw that, with fascist Italy, with fascist Spain, with fascist Germany, with Pinochet's takeover of Chile. And it looks like we may be seeing that right now with Donald Trump. Is there any precedent for countries pulling back from the brink, ejecting their unfit leaders? Perhaps the rejection of Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil, or what South Korea just did with their leader? Or are those normal? Are those anomalies? I mean, what lessons can we learn from how other countries have dealt with this psychopathology of fascism, and it was some success?
Well, it is, we can go in any direction. Mm-hmm. Just as individual illness can be brought to greater states of health, or be drawn and pulled further into a death spiral, as you described. That's exactly the phrase I've been using since last year, or actually a couple of years even prior to that, of the state of our society. And well, the further into the death spiral we are, the harder it is to pull ourselves out. But it is always a contest, in a way, between the sickness and our ability to have insight, awareness that something is wrong, and to seek help for it, as well as to seek the proper help. We have seen from our situation that we have this extremely destructive mental health crisis, I would say. It's a public mental health emergency. And yet, mental health experts were the first to be blacked out of the media, when there are very few interventions that we could have other than education in public health. That holds true across the board, because we have to get other people's understanding as to what is happening, get their buy-in to collaborate in creating health promoting structures, and to guarding our own mental health so that we don't get drawn in. Yeah. In fact, Carl Jung, Swiss psychiatrist, described it as the following. He stated that, indeed, it is becoming ever more obvious that it is not famine, not earthquakes, not microbes, not cancer, but man himself who is man's greatest danger to man, for the simple reason that there is no adequate protection against psychic epidemics, which are infinitely more devastating than the worst of natural catastrophes. And I would say that we are in a psychic epidemic right now. I've called it a mental health pandemic, deriving from Trump contagion, as I've labeled it in the book you described, The Psychology of Trump Contagion, how mental impairment and unfitness in one individual can spread to society by virtue of his influential position.
How do we, by the way, we're speaking with Dr. Bandy Lee, a psychiatrist, president of the World Mental Health Coalition. Her latest book, The Psychology of Trump Contagion, the existential threat to American democracy and all humankind. Her Substack is Bandy Lee, BANDY Lee @substack.com. Dr. Lee, how can we as individuals best psychologically protect ourselves from Trump contagion, from this contagious psychopathology that has clearly seized pretty much the entire Trump administration and much of our Congress?
Yes, first step is to care for our own mental health. I call it mental hygiene, and grounding ourselves in the things that we enjoy and the people we love, and maintaining that. Because if we lose our own mental health, we will not be able to contend with the mental health pandemic that is going on. You might have noticed among lots of Trump followers and those who voted for him that they may have indeed lost their basic mental capacity by virtue of wholesale taking in his view of reality, which is detached from actual reality, and his many beliefs that are contradictory to what would be beneficial to society and even life affirming. So that would be one step. Collectively, we could strengthen the structures of democracy, because democracy along the developmental scale of societies is an evolved state of mature state of health, and nations, societies can regress back to states of earlier development as a sign of ill health. And of course, going back in development is different than being in the actual stage of development. For example, an adult acting like a 3-year-old is not normal, whereas a 3-year-old acting like their age is normal. So when we regress in our development and go back, there are many behaviors that we portray, and one of them is to double down when one is wrong. And in fact, the less we set limits and redirect behavior, the more one will insist that one is correct, and in fact, they will keep pushing until to prove to themselves that they are correct and everyone else is wrong. But of course, reality has its consequences, and so oftentimes the backlash from that is to try to fix reality. In other words, why does this administration focus so much on controlling the press, the media, and universities? It is because they're trying to reshape reality, when in fact it's resistant to our wishes, especially forced wishes, and unfortunately, in many countries throughout the world where this has happened, where unfit leaders have taken charge, mass deaths have occurred, genocides, massacres, endless wars.
Let's hope that doesn't come here. Dr. Bandy Exley, bandyexley.substack.com is her website.